Novel Navigator. Chapter 71, 11-match winning streak. The battle continued. Jian Wushuang's arrogant words of all are welcome indeed annoyed the disciples of the Dragon Palace. Many disciples who had broken through the 5th level itched to have a try, which was as he expected. Based on the comprehension of realm, these disciples were almost all at the level of exceptional spiritual C realm, while Jian Wushuang barely reached the 5th level, so many of the disciples who broke through the 5th floor are stronger than him. Nevertheless, his greatest strength was in his cultivation method, which had superior overall power. Relying on his absolute strength, he won the 5th confrontation. Followed by the 6th and 7th challenges, until the 11th. Jian Wushuang won all 11 matches. Those disciples of Dragon Palace at the martial arts practice field were speechless in astonishment. It was nothing for Jian Wushuang to win 1 or 2 battles consecutively, but now he had won 11 battles successively. In addition to the first 3 disciples who were at the 4th level, the other 8 disciples were all at the 5th level. However, they were all defeated by Jian Wushuang. It is his power that makes this happen. His power is even stronger than exceptional spiritual C realm. It's strange that he has so much power as he is only at the level of spiritual C realm. He has completed 11 battles in a row, but his spiritual power has not diminished. Why? Did he not need to consume his spiritual power when confronting others? Everyone was astonished. They thought Jian Wushuang's strength and vast spiritual power were amazing. Needless to say, his strength was much stronger than exceptional spiritual C realm. But it was also his vast spiritual power shocked others so much. Several battles among these 11 battles were bitter fights, so how much spiritual power would these successive battles consume? Usually warriors needed to stop and have a rest to recover their spiritual power after at most 3 battles, but what about Jian Wushuang? Keep fighting. After 11 battles without any pause, Jian Wushuang won all of them without any reduction in spiritual power. How could this happen? And he was actually still at his peak level. What kind of monster is he? All those watching thought that this was incredible. Who else wants to battle me for points? Jian Wushuang said confidently and looked around. The disciples of Dragon Palace looked at each other in speechless despair and nobody stood out. Winning 11 battles in a row, Jian Wushuang proved to all that he was strong enough, and those people who wanted to challenge him would surely lose face and worse, 1,000 points. For them, 1,000 points was a big deal. No one else. Seeing everyone's hesitation, Jian Wushuang nodded with satisfaction. However, as he was about to turn around and leave, an ethereal voice was suddenly heard. "It's very crowded here, isn't it?" The soft voice was followed by the arrival of a handsome man dressed in a luxurious robe who slowly appeared. Nangongji. Isn't he isolating himself? Why is he here? Haha, it must be the commotion. A burst of noise swirled all around, which made it clear that these disciples of Dragon Palace knew this handsome man. Jian Wushuang also looked at the man and found his appearance was almost perfect with slender physique, handsome face, and a free and ethereal temperament. Soon after I finished my self-isolation, I heard that there was a newcomer in Dragon Palace and he said that anyone who had broken through the 5th level can challenge him. What arrogance! Nangongji smiled lightly, but his eyes were instantly locked on Jian Wushuang. Nangongji, my brother has said this, but these words are only for the disciples of Dragon Palace at the level of spiritual C. So you, who has broken through 6 months ago, shouldn't be here. Wang Yuan couldn't help but shout. Most disciples of the Dragon Palace were at the level of spiritual C realm, but a small part of them were at the level of gold core, and Nangongji was one of them. Oh, I do not know that your brother has made a distinction between spiritual C realm and gold core. I am also the disciple of Dragon Palace who has broken through the 5th level, so it's okay for me to join this battle. Moreover, your brother just has a normal perception of the realm of heaven and earth, but he successively defeated so many disciples of Dragon Palace who are at the 5th level. It is precisely that his strength is much stronger than the others. I think his strength will not be weaker than a disciple at the level of primordial gold core if he goes all out. So it's quite fair for me to challenge him. Nangongji said. Exactly, this swordsman defeated so many disciples because that his strength is stronger than exceptional spiritual sea realm. Now Nangongji's strength is also stronger than exceptional spiritual sea realm, these two should have a battle. Immediately some disciples kicked up a fuss. Wang Yuan wanted to refute them. Wang Yuan, stop. Jian Wushuang waved one of his hands to interrupt him and continued, since I said that, I won't break my promise. Nangongji, it's okay to gamble with you, but the stakes are still only 1,000 points. 1,000 points. Nangongji raised his eyebrow and said, no problem. I'll start. Nangongji smiled thinly, and his figure began to slowly dissipate at this moment. Whoosh! A sword light appeared in front of Jian Wushuang suddenly. So fast. Jian Wushuang was greatly frightened. He knew sword principle of Gale, and was also good at speed, but the speed of Nangongji was so fast that he even did not know when his sword was drawn. The sword essence of earth was so strong that Jian Wushuang did not hesitate to defend with it. Clang! 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 Nangongji slashed his sword 10 times consecutively with increasing speed and power. Jian Wushuang went for broke to going all out with sword essence of earth to defend against Nangongji. However, he felt that he could not sustain this because the sword shadow was like thousands of poisonous snakes. Suddenly, pop! Nangongji's sword edge crossed Jian Wushuang's right hand wrist with a very clear sword scar. The pain in Jian Wushuang's wrist made him loosen his grip of the triple kill sword. Bro Jr., are you okay? Wang Yuan, Yang Zexuan, and Suro immediately rushed over. I'm fine. Jian Wushuang shook his head and picked up triple kill sword again. Nangongji, the battle is just for learning from each other. You shouldn't hurt him so much. Wang Yuan shouted in a low voice. Oh, sorry, it's just an accident. Nangongji replied immediately. But his joking smile made it clear to everyone that he did it on purpose. Chapter 72, Scheduling a Battle. Damn it! Wang Yuan gnashed. Bro Senior, can I help you? Yang Zexuan said with an increasingly cold look on Nangongji. They all knew that Nangongji Gong did it deliberately. No, Jian Wushuang shook his head. He knew that Yang Zexuan had enough strength to defeat Nangongji, but he thought this was his own matter and he did not want others to help him. I lost this battle. 1,000 points, here you are. Jian Wushuang gave Nangongji 1,000 points directly without hesitation. After getting the 1,000 points, Nangongji didn't change his facial expression but touched his nose and said suddenly, Swordsman, do you want to fight with me one more time? Jian Wushuang was so surprised. Nangongji, don't go that far. Wang Yuan immediately shouted. Don't get me wrong. Nangongji shook his head and said, I intend to continue the battle for points, but this time the condition will be changed. For example, you will win as long as you withstand my swords for 3 times. What do you think about it? I can win after 3 swords. Wang Yuan immediately looked at Jian Wushuang in confusion. Disciples of the Dragon Palace around him all looked over and discussed this heatedly. What does Nangongji intend to do? Jian Wushuang will be the winner after fighting with him for 3 moves. In the past battle, Swordsman used nearly 20 moves before he won. What's wrong with Nangongji? Does he want to give his points to others for nothing? These disciples of Dragon Palace were confused over Nangongji's behavior, because in the past battle, Jian Wushuang endured nearly 20 moves before he won. Now he wanted to defeat Jian Wushuang with less than 3 moves. What a joke! If I agree with the battle, how many points will you bet? Jian Wushuang looked at Nangongji calmly. 1,000 points is too few. I believe you have many points now because you have won so many battles before, so I will bet my 7,000 points, including my current points and the 1,000 points I won from you. Nangongji said with smile. 7,000 points. People around he were all shocked. Nangongji is too confident. How could he be so brave to bet 7,000 points in such an unfair confrontation? 7,000 points. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly with his pupils shrinking, but then he rejected, sorry, I'm not interested in it. What? Nangongji changed his facial expression. He refused. It was incredible, someone around exclaimed. It's clear that the swordsman can win points without any effort, but he refused it. Is he a fool? Humph. You are a real fool. Nangongji must have enough ability to bet on 7,000 points with the swordsman. In my opinion, the swordsman is really stupid if he agreed with the battle. Yes, Nangongji absolutely has enough confidence in his strength. Many of these disciples of Dragon Palace were shrewd enough to see through the intention of Nangongji. Jian Wushuang, of course, was not a fool. Humph. Wanting to set a trap for me to get more points from my hands. Jian Wushuang smiled coldly. In the past battle, though Nangongji did his utmost to conceal himself, Jian Wushuang saw the truth clearly. He did not do his best, and he even just used less than half of his strength. Jian Wushuang knew it clearly. It looked like Nangongji beat him with nearly 20 moves in the last battle, but in fact, Nangongji did it deliberately. Jian Wushuang had no doubt that if Nangongji goes for broke, he could not withstand one move, let alone 3 moves. His comprehension for sword essence is much better than me, and he definitely has the strength to break through the 6th level. The 6th level? Yes, this was Jian Wushuang's assessment for the strength of Nangongji. Nangongji was at the level of Gold Core and his understanding of sword essence was at the 6th level of Dragon Gate. His strength could surely defeat him with no more than 3 moves. He rejected. He didn't fall into my trap. Nangongji was very angry at this moment. How did he know that I deliberately concealed my strength? Or was he too cautious to use 7,000 points to bet with me? Nangongji. Jian Wushuang's voice was heard again. Nangongji could not help looking up. If you really want to bet with me, it's okay. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly and continued, but today I battled with others many times and my spiritual power has been consumed greatly. My wrist is hurt, so I have no power to battle again. Therefore, we can conduct this battle in 3 months' time. 3 months. Nangongji frowned. Of course, after 3 months, I will have a fair battle with you, and I will accept any points you want to bet. What do you think? Jian Wushuang said. Hearing these words, Nangongji's eyes were bright. Deal. Nangongji agreed quickly. Deal. Jian Wushuang nodded seriously. Hearing their words, people around were confused. Is this swordsman stupid? Having a fair battle with Nangongji in 3 months. Points are also up to Nangongji. Does he think that he can beat Nangongji in 3 months? He is definitely crazy. Almost everyone thought Jian Wushuang was crazy and silly. After all, Nangongji had great strength. Many disciples knew from the last battle that he could break through the 6th, and he was also an expert of the Gold Core realm. While Jian Wushuang just was at the level of spiritual sea realm. Even if his strength was great enough to fight with primordial Gold Core, how was his understanding of sword essence? Jian Wushuang's understanding of sword essence could just narrowly break through the 5th level. What a big gap! Could he make up such a large gap in 3 months? What a joke! Haha! Nangongji was very happy, and he laughed. Your words have been heard by so many people present. I will come see you in 3 months. After these words, Nangongji turned around and left happily. As he was leaving, Nangongji was still thinking about the scene in 3 months. This guy didn't know that I just showed a small part of my strength and I didn't show my perception of sword essence completely. I also didn't show my trump card. Even in this case, I beat him easily. How can he beat me in 3 months? Haha, come on. I'm looking forward to that day, but that day, I will bet much more than 7,000 points. Nangongji was full of confidence for the battle in 3 months. All those on the martial arts practice field looked at Jian Wushuang with pity in their eyes. However, no one noticed that a subtle smile appeared in the corners of Jian Wushuang's mouth. Chapter 73, Sword Skills Being Obtained. It was not long before Jian Wushuang left the martial arts practice field. Wushuang, are you sure that you can duel with Nangongji in 3 months? Wang Yuan could not help asking the question. I have already promised him. I can't break my word, can I? Jian Wushuang said with a faint smile. But Nangongji is very strong. Wang Yuan said seriously. I know, Nangongji can break through level 6, said Yang Zexuan. I know. Jian Wushuang nodded, but was not afraid. Take it easy. I promised I would duel with him and I'm confident of success. In 3 months you'll see. Jian Wushuang had a faint smile. He did not feel anxious. Perhaps 3 months was a short time for ordinary warriors, but for Jian Wushuang it was too long. It had only taken him 4 months before he understood what the sword essence was. It had only taken 4 months before Jian Wushuang was eligible to break through to the level 5 of the Dragon Gate. Perhaps, even Dragon Palace disciples would be shocked at his cultivation speed. He had cultivated by himself without any teachers or help for 4 months. Even so, great progress had been made, not to mention now in the Dragon Palace. The Dragon Palace was renowned as a holy place for cultivating. It was rich in resources. 4 temples of earth, fire, water, and wind, the secret land of heaven and earth, the secret pavilion. Besides, Jian Wushuang could learn from so many talents now by exchanging views. With such wonderful conditions for cultivation, he would certainly comprehend the realm of heaven and earth faster. That was why he was confident enough to duel with Nangongji in 3 months' time and had promised that no matter how many points Nangongji required, Jian Wushuang would agree. Anyway, nobody but Jian Wushuang himself knew the reason. Shortly afterwards Jian Wushuang went to the secret pavilion again. He had hardly won 11 duels in succession when he lost one in the martial art practice field. Every time he won a duel, Jian Wushuang would get 1,000 points. So he had 10,000 points in total. Including the 2,000 points from his own, he had 12,000 points in total. He was very well off now. Surely now that he had enough points, Jian Wushuang would naturally buy whatever he wanted. Using 7,000 points, he bought the formless sword wave and 3 skills of the formless swordsmanship. Then he exchanged 1,500 points for the reincarnation sword skill in comprehending sword essence of earth. Reincarnation sword skill was a sword skill for defense, sword essence of earth was the best for defense. After obtaining these 3 superb sword skill, Jian Wushuang bought 20 first-class divine pills with 400 points. Heavenly Spirit Pill was similar to Spirit Cultivating Pill. Only by breaking through spiritual sea realm could warriors take Heavenly Spirit Pill. Weaker warriors should take Spirit Cultivating Pill. First-class Heavenly Spirit Pill was the best in Heavenly Spirit Pills. It was potent enough to produce the desired effect. In the outside world, first-class Heavenly Spirit Pill was very rare with extraordinary value, but in the secret pavilion of Dragon Palace it only cost 20 points for one first-class Heavenly Spirit Pill. Thus, Jian Wushuang exchanged 400 points for 20 first-class Heavenly Spirit Pills. As soon as he had bought what he wanted, he returned to his manor. In the courtyard of the manor, Wang Yuan, Yang Zexuan, and Suro sat at the stone table drinking wine. From time to time they turned to look at Jian Wushuang, who was practicing his sword skill. Bzzz. Jian Wushuang happened to be aggressive with his firm sword shadow. It was quite easy for him to learn the first move of formless sword wave without stopping. The second, third, fourth, sixth move. Formless sword ripple was divided into two parts. Each part included 7 sword skills. However, Jian Wushuang was such a genius that he performed the first 6 sword skills easily. He has performed the 6th move. Wang Yuan was shocked. After having bought the sword skill, he performed the first 6 moves in merely 2 hours. Even if he had comprehended the sword essence of earth, he shouldn't have performed such sword tactics so fluently. Yang Zixuan was a little surprised as well. After all, sword skills were combined perfectly using sword essence and swordsmanship. It was important to comprehend sword essence, but it was more important and difficult to grasp every move of the wonderful sword skills. Like a general warrior, even if he got the sword skills and had the appropriate sword essence, it would take a long time to learn and grasp the moves and skills of sword tactics. But Jian Wushuang was absolutely not an ordinary warrior. After having bought the sword skills, he performed the first 6 moves in just 2 hours with no difficulty. He is a genius, Yang Zixuan thought with eyes blazing like torches. Wushuang has a gift for sword principle. He's such a genius. If an ordinary genius wants to grasp the first moves of such advanced sword skills, he must learn for several days. Wang Yuan sighed. Jian Wushuang had hardly performed the 6th move of the formless sword wave when he stopped practicing. Formless sword wave is worth 5,000 points. Every skill or move is powerful enough, so I'll comprehend the sword essence of earth as much as possible. Jian Wushuang was quite satisfied. He had always been distressed for he could not comprehend the sword essence of earth fully without suitable sword skills. But now he did not need to worry. What a pity. Perhaps I cannot comprehend the sword essence of earth fully. Although I am trying my best, I cannot break through the 6th move, Jian Wushuang thought. He had grasped the basic skills of the 7th move but had not been able to perform the complete swordsmanship. Haste creates waste. I have to walk with a firm step. Jian Wushuang thought with a faint smile. Shortly afterwards he started learning the reincarnation sword skill. Early the next morning, Jian Wushuang came to the 4 temples. The 4 temples of earth, fire, water, and wind were renowned for their 6 strong temple masters, who would occasionally give instruction in the palace. Today, a master was giving lessons. Jian Wushuang went into the ground palace where many of Dragon Palace disciples sat on the ground. Some were discussing as they pleased. Jian Wushuang did not mind the disciples talking around him. He sat down and closed his eyes to cultivate. It was not long before a master appeared. Jian Wushuang opened his eyes and turned to him. He was a middle-aged man wearing a golden robe. He looked quite kind. He seemed to be an ordinary person without excessive tyranny, but when Jian Wushuang first looked at this middle-aged man, he found himself deeply attracted by the master, as if the man had something magical. That is why he can give lessons in Dragon Palace. Although he showed no strength outside, he seems stronger than Yirufeng, Jian Wushuang thought. Chapter 74, 3 months. The whole Earth Temple fell into complete silence immediately when the man showed up. The middle-aged man sat on the ground and started giving lessons. What he taught were some concepts and experiences. He occasionally performed a few movements of the Earth Essence realm. Every one of the disciples, including Jian Wushuang, listened intently. It was not long before Jian Wushuang felt puzzled about the lessons. He fell into deep thought. After an hour, the man stopped teaching. He waved his hands to the people in the palace before all the disciples on the ground left. Jian Wushuang rose to walk out of the palace slowly. He was in deep contemplation. He did not come out of it until he was far away from the palace. Is that it? That's the reason. A flash appeared on Jian Wushuang's face, his eyes were sparkling like fire. He turned to gaze at the Earth Temple and inhaled deeply. He was clear that though the middle-aged man had only taught for 1 hour, Jian Wushuang had still learned a lot. He had also comprehended unknown knowledge about sword essence of earth in his head. Perhaps this is why the 4 temples are called one of the 3 treasures of Dragon Palace. It was so helpful to listen to the lessons from the temple master. Jian Wushuang sighed. 4 temples of the 3 treasures of Dragon Palace did not require many points. Dragon Palace disciples could listen to their lessons whenever they wanted. But this did not mean the 4 temples were useless. Instead, the 4 temples were sometimes more helpful and larger than the secret land of heaven and earth and the secret pavilion. I did not comprehend a lot and had no teachers to ask before. I relied only on myself to cultivate. However, everything I needed is now in front of me. Next I'll know what achievements I can make. Jian Wushuang held his hands tightly with eyes sparkling. From then on, Jian Wushuang was deeply focused on cultivating. His cultivation was very regular. When the temple masters of the Earth Temple and the Wind Temple in the 4 temples gave general lessons, Jian Wushuang would go and study by himself afterwards. Sometimes he would go to the martial arts practice field and watch the other disciples' fights. When he fought with others, he always kept his strength. As for the secret land of heaven and earth, he could not go there whenever he wanted. After all, although it was helpful for him to comprehend the sword essence there, he would think about the mechanism of it for a long time. Thus, Jian Wushuang went there once every 2 weeks in general. 3 months passed quickly. These were the most precious 3 months for any newcomer. One must know that almost everyone lacked in good teachers and cultivation resources before going to the Dragon Palace. So they began to learn considerably in the 3 months. In the history of the Dragon Palace, some disciples had been ordinary, but after the 3 months they showed significant talent and improved remarkably. Never mind Jian Wushuang, who had woken up his sword soul during the 3 months, how much had he improved? He was in the manner. His sword shadow was so swift that it was like lightning in the sky. A gust of wind passed. When he stopped performing, the wind died away. Everything fell into silence. No, this movement is still far from perfect. Jian Wushuang wrinkled his brows in concentration. Though it was fast enough, he was not satisfied with the movement he had just performed. I have completely grasped the 4th movement of the formless swordsmanship, but the 5th is still wrong. The 4th movement of the formless swordsmanship was named 100 variations, which he had completely grasped in 2 months. But the 5th. It was much more difficult than the 4th. The first 3 movements of the formless swordsmanship were very complicated, while the middle 3 movements were even more difficult. Never mind the last 3 movements. That's why the formless swordsmanship is renowned as the greatest sword skill in Tianzong dynasty. Although the formless sword wave was also a sword skill, it only took him 2 hours to completely grasp all of the first 7 movements and perform the first 6 movements on the ground. But the formless swordsmanship was much more complicated than the formless sword wave. He had completely comprehended the 4th movements after 3 months. However, he did not understand the 5th. Wushuang. Wang Yuan hastily came in with his raspy voice, and Yang Zixuan and Suro followed him. What's the matter? Jian Wushuang turned to look at them. Wang Yuan approached Jian Wushuang and breathed for a while before he said, Nangongji has gone through the Dragon Gate Pass. Oh. Jian Wushuang was a little surprised, but immediately said with a faint smile, which level did he pass? The 6th. Wang Yuan looked serious and said, as we know, he has passed the 6th in less than an hour. It will not be long before he goes through the 7th, but he will stay there for a long time before he advances further. 3 months ago, I knew he could pass the 6th, but he did not try until today. It was obviously deliberate for him to go through the 6th today when you will fight with him. I think he was afraid you might flee away if he did so earlier. Yang Zixuan said. Timid Suro, who had been speechless, added, there's a threshold between the 6th and the 7th Dragon Gate. The level keeper of the 7th is much stronger than that of the 6th. He could fight with the level keeper of the 7th, which means he is very strong. Jian Wushuang listened carefully and he nodded slightly. Indeed, it was not a big deal for him to go through the 6th because they had already known he could pass it. But it was completely different for him to fight with the level keeper of the 7th. Nangongji's capacity to understand the sword essence is the best even among the disciples who have gone through the 6th. Yang Zixuan said. Wushuan, what's your plan? Wang Yuan turned to look at him. All I can do is take measures according to the actual situation. Jian Wushuan smiled. You have a big heart. Wang Yuan rolled his eyes. Jian Wushuan smiled. He did not feel anxious. He had passed the 6th level in Dragon Gate and fought sharply for a long time with the 7th level keeper. So what? So what? I'm not shocked by that at all. It's funny. It was because he had not gone through the Dragon Palace for 3 months. Otherwise it was Nangongji who had to worry now. You three can talk while I have to go to the secret land of heaven and earth once more. Jian Wushuan said. He left to go to the secret land of heaven and earth. Wang Yuan and the others watched Jian Wushuan's back from afar. They were worried. Wushuan must be anxious. That's why he is going to the secret land of heaven and earth. I am afraid he's not confident about fighting with Nangongji. Wang Yuan said seriously, I hope Nangongji will not bet too many points. Otherwise it'll be your turn to win back the points for Wushuan. I do not mind fighting with him. But I am afraid Nangongji dares not to fight with me, Yang Zixuan said in a cold voice. Chapter 75, Battle for Massive Points. Despite it being early in the morning, there were many disciples of Dragon Palace, some of whom were even at the 6th or 7th level, gathered on the martial arts practice field. Many people wanted to watch as it was well known that Jian Wushuan and Nangongji would fight here in 3 months. Have you heard? Nangongji got past the 6th level in Dragon Gate. He even fought a close battle for a long time with the 7th level keeper. Of course. Nangongji didn't fight earlier or later until the last day before the duel. His purpose was very clear. Look, he is coming. Nangongji, in a luxurious robe with charming smile, and another 2 disciples came over side by side slowly walking amongst all the disciples of Dragon Palace. The 2 disciples were well known in Dragon Palace, who both had passed the 6th level. You two, don't forget what I told you. Nangongji talked with the 2 disciples in a low voice. Don't worry. We will never forget what we have promised. Not to mention that it is also important for us, one of them replied. 3,000 points. It is not a small number. I will not lend it to you easily if I didn't know your actual ability, the other one smiled. So, you two just enjoy the fight. As soon as the fight is over, I will return the 3,000 points with an extra 1,000 points. Nangongji smiled. Of course. We have never doubted your ability. The 2 disciples smiled. They have both battled with Nangongji, so they knew his ability. There was no point worrying. It was why they agreed to lend their points to Nangongji. Not long after Nangongji arrived at the martial arts practice field, Jian Wushuan also appeared, of course followed by Wang Yuan and others. Look. The newbie is coming. It seems that he is confident. Wouldn't a genius like him who is qualified to be a member of Dragon Palace be confident? What's more, he has been in Dragon Palace for 3 months, which is a time of great improvement. So as a newbie, he must have improved significantly in this period. Great improvement? So what? How far can he go in 3 months? He could get past the 5th level with difficulty 3 months ago. It is unlikely that he could reach the 6th level. He can only beat Nangongji in his dreams. Yeah, he is a newbie after all. Hope he won't lose too badly. Guess how many points will Nangongji bet with the newbie? The newbie has said in public that he will agree with any amount of points. Let's wait and see. He won't win anyway. It will be a lesson for him to be more humble as a newbie. Disciples of Dragon Palace on the scene spoke loudly without much thought, so both Jian Wushuang and Nangongji could hear them clearly. Swordsman, you dared to come. Nangongji laughed and looked at Jian Wushuang. I promised to fight with you 3 months ago, so I've come. Jian Wushuang said indifferently. Great courage, but you are a newbie after all, too naive. Nangongji shook his head and said. Cut the crap, Nangongji, how many points do you want to bet? Jian Wushuang asked. Don't worry. You are a newbie after all, so I won't go too far. Nangongji grinned, I know you won 11 fight 3 months ago. Although you have been defeated by me, you won 10,000 points in the end. Plus you came to here to fight and won some points. So you have about 15,000 points. I have borrowed my friend's points 12,000 in total. Let's bet 12,000 points. 12,000 points. Isn't this too much? All the people present were stunned. They all knew that Jian Wushuang got many points by fighting. But scores were very valuable and important in Secret Pavilion and Secret Land of Heaven and Earth. It must be difficult for him to take out 12,000 points. Isn't it too much? 12,000 points. 12,000 points were enough to exchange for several secret techniques or to go to Secret Land of Heaven and Earth 12 times. It was a large amount for any disciples of Dragon Palace. Nangongji had gone too far in betting 12,000 points. Do you think the points are too much? But you said yourself that you would agree to whatever bet I wanted. Nangongji put on an act and said. 12,000 points? Okay. Jian Wushuang nodded his head directly. Haha, great courage. Nangongji said with a smile immediately. The drill ground was immediately filled with turmoil. He agreed. The swordsman dared to take it? It is 12,000 points. The swordsman has so many points? Is he being arrogant at his own cost? Seeing all the worried eyes, Jian Wushuang smiled secretly and turned to Wang Yuan and other 2 people. Bro senior and sis junior, I need you to borrow me some points. Jian Wushuang said. He did not have 12,000 points but he could borrow them. Do you have the confidence, bro? It is 12,000 points. Wang Yuan frowned and said. Definitely. Jian Wushuang nodded. Okay, it is enough to hear that. I trust you. You can have all my 4,000 points. Wang Yuan said directly. I have exchanged for 2 secrets before, so I don't have that many. You can have my left 1.5 thousand points. Yang Zixuan said. You can also have my 3,000 points. Suro said timidly. Enough. Jian Wushuang smiled and looked at his brothers and sis gratefully. Jian Wushuang regarded the 3 people as his brothers and sis the moment they lent their points to him without any hesitation. 12,000 points. Jian Wushuang took out his disciple's pledge. The points in the pledge were shown to everyone. Jian Wushuang looked at Nangongji with a threatening gaze. Nangongji, you looked for this fight yourself. Primordial Gold Core is a big deal. You got past the 6th level in Dragon Gate and fought closely for a long time with the 7th level keeper. Is that a big deal? I will test how much progress I have made in the 3 months by fighting with you. Come on. A 12,000 point battle would begin at any moment. Chapter 76, Formless Sword Ripple. Haha, freshman, you should be careful. Nangongji's laugh rang out on martial arts practice field. Chuyo. A cold sword shadow broke the air and moved towards Jian Wushuang. The sword edge was cold enough to tear through anything. Formless swordsmanship? Jian Wushuang was surprised. Jian Wushuang was very familiar with the sword skill. Nangongji was using the first move of the formless sword art, Blood Shadow. Jian Wushuang drew his sword and used the formless sword art too. The 2 sword shadows were both incredibly fast. They entwined with each other like two serpents, then separated immediately after colliding. "Fuck off!" Followed by a howl, the long sword in Jian Wushuang's hand drew up immediately, filled with killing intent. A fresh bloody sword shadow moved through the air like it was dancing in the wind. In an instant, the air was cut through directly. "Ha ha!" Nangongji laughed. Then he moved his wrist and used the same sword movement. It started with the first move, blood shadow, then came the second move, sword killing movement. They were tied again at the end. Time for a different skill. Jian Wushuang had a cold look in his eyes. Whoosh! A sword shadow immediately stabbed out. It seemed very slow, but the real speed was astonishingly fast. The fourth move of formless swordsmanship, 100 illusions. The fourth move. Ridiculous, Nangongji yelled out and grinned. The same slow sword came out from Nangongji. They struck each other and then separated at the same time. Jian Wushuang stared at Nangongji with a dignified look. "Swordsman, this is your level of strength after earnest cultivation in Dragon Palace for 3 months. Nangongji stared at Jian Wushuang with a little derision. "It is really brave of you to take out those 12,000 points and fight with only this much strength. Stupid enough. I will show you my real strength." After saying that, Nangongji prepared to make his next move. Weng. It seemed slow, but it was actually an astonishingly fast strike. Nangongji still used the fourth move, 100 illusions. It was the same move, but it was twice as fast as before. The previous sword strike was already extremely fast. How did he manage to reach a speed that was twice as fast as before? So fast. Jian Wushuang's complexion couldn't help changing when he saw that terrifying speed sword. "You lose," Nangongji growled in an excited voice at that moment. Will he be defeated? All the people around there paid attention to the scene, watched as the sword light approached Jian Wushuang. After the hum, sword essence of earth was released from Jian Wushuang's sword. A thorough and majestic sword shadow struck out. The sword shadow seemed to be overlapped by numerous sword shadows, striking out violently. It seemed like a 100 million pound mountain, grinding everything as it violently moved forwards. What? Nangongji's complexion changed a lot. Before he could respond, the 100 million pound mountain reached him. Peng! The loud roar shook the whole space instantly, with its power forming several shock waves. It even swept away many disciples of Dragon Palace that were too close at that time. After that strike, on the battleground, Nangongji was knocked back awkwardly. He quickly noticed a sharp pain in his palm and a little blood. A giant sword scar, nearly a foot wide, was left on the ground in front of him. Lots of disciples of Dragon Palace around there gasped after seeing the sword scar. It was the seventh move, formless sword wave. Some disciples of Dragon Palace immediately recognized the swordsmanship Jian Wushuang used just now. Formless sword wave? Nangongji felt stressed. There were a lot of sword skills in the secret pavilion. That included some famous ones, such as formless sword wave. He knew that. Formless sword wave was quite fitting for warriors who comprehended the sword essence of earth. In general, if you could fully use the sixth move, you would be able to pass the fifth level in the Dragon Gate. As for the seventh move, it was no problem to get past the sixth level in the Dragon Gate. I was too careless. I didn't expect his comprehension of the sword essence of earth to be much higher than the sword essence of Gale, but, this is the end. I will not give him another chance to use that move. Nangongji thought solemnly. The seventh move, formless sword wave, was powerful. A sane person would not confront the toughness with toughness. However, warriors who comprehended the sword essence of Gale depended on speed, rather than strength. Nangongji. Jian Wushuang's voice rang out suddenly. His black eyes stared at this Nangongji with indifference. You said you would show me your real strength just now, and I've seen it. Jian Wushuang spoke, with a grin that was similar to a blade. "Now, I'll let you see my real strength." After saying that, Jian Wushuang held the triple kill sword with both hands, raising the long sword high. When the splendid sword essence of earth reached its peak at that moment. Boom! Such a terrifying sword stroke. Before the sword stroke landed, everyone already felt a horrible power was continuously condensing. The momentum in Jian Wushuang's triple kill sword increased suddenly and sharply. Everyone saw a giant sword shadow forming slowly, 3 meters long and half-meter wide. Oppression. The moment the giant sword shadow formed, the oppressive atmosphere reached its peak. The air seemed to shiver. Formless sword wave, the 8th move. Jian Wushuang shouted out suddenly. The huge streak of sword shadow drew everyone's attention. With a soaring aura, it wavered slightly and then lashed out. The world suddenly changed colors. The 8th move? Can it really be the 8th move? Nangongji's eye opened widely. He was already shocked when Jian Wushuang used the 7th move. Now, Jian Wushuang was about to use the 8th move. It was well known that anyone who was able to perform the 7th move was qualified to reach the 6th level. The 8th move. The formless sword wave, 8th move, along with his comprehension of the sword essence of earth, was enough to pass the 7th level. 7th floor. Although he fought fiercely with the keeper of the 7th floor for a long time when he went through the Dragon Gate yesterday, he knew that it was not a fierce fight. Instead, it was a very suffocating fight because he was completely suppressed by the keeper. He only managed to prolong the fight for a while by relying on his speed. He clearly understood that he was far from being able to pass the 7th level. But now, someone who entered Dragon Palace for only 3 months ago, surpassed him completely in comprehension of sword essence. Nangongji was dumbfounded when the splendid, giant sword shadow, hacked directly towards him. Following that, an unprecedented look of madness appeared on his face. "Swordsman, you made me do this." Chapter 77, Profound Gold Core Realm. The huge and mighty sword shadow crashed down. The 8th move. He can master the 8th move. All the disciples of Dragon Palace held their breath. "Go away!" Nangongji shouted suddenly with a tremendous spiritual power erupting out of him. "What?" Everyone was surprised. An icy sword shadow erupted with incomparable power, struck out directly and tore the sword shadow into pieces immediately. The mighty power then turned into a strong breeze and dissipated. However, after tearing the sword shadow into pieces, the power of that sword shadow still persisted and turned into a light flying straight towards Jian Wushuang. "What's this?" Shockingly, Jian Wushuang swung his sword against it immediately. Clang! A violent power crashed over Jian Wushuang with a loud bang. He was forced to step back, each step heavy enough to crack the ground. When he came to a stop, he shook his stinging palms. Jian Wushuang looked up at Nangongji again with an extremely serious expression. "Nangongji, I have looked down on you. I would have never thought that you would not only hide your comprehension of sword essence, but also your cultivation of spiritual power. Maybe only a few people knew you were at Profound Gold Core Realm in Dragon Palace." Profound Gold Core Realm. Right. This moment, the spiritual power of Nangongji had reached Profound Gold Core Realm. When the disciples of Dragon Palace on martial art practice field noticed his spiritual power, a stir was raised. Profound Gold Core Realm. Nangongji has reached Profound Gold Core Realm. A man who has reached Profound Gold Core Realm challenged a new guy who was at the level of Spiritual C to a duel? Nangongji might be going too far. The gazes of disciples of Dragon Palace looking at Nangongji, suddenly changed. One should know that one has his own pride as a genius. Anyway, Jian Wushuang had just reached Spiritual C realm. As a primordial gold core, Nangongji was just bullying. And now, Nangongji had revealed that his cultivation of spiritual power reached Profound Gold Core realm. A man who has reached profound gold core realm challenged a warrior who was at the level of spiritual C to a duel? It was far more than bullying, this was shameless. Nangongji, as a profound gold core realm, you challenged my bro to a duel? You are so shameless, so brazen. If I were you, I would hide my face in disgrace. Wang Yuan shouted from the sidelines. Huh. Nangongji looked around and said in his chilliest tone, the world has its law of the jungle, and the Dragon Palace has too. How would you fight a duel to win points if you don't even know how to hide your strength? Swordsman. Nangongji looked at Jian Wushuang. You, as a freshman entering Dragon Palace for less than 3 months, it's an honor to force me to this situation. I will still gladly accept your 12,000 points. Boom. Nangongji pushed off the ground, which cracked at once. With an ear-piercing rushing sound, Nangongji slashed with his sword. It was still formless swordsmanship. Under the outburst of spiritual power of profound gold core realm, the speed and power had both reached a brand new level. The sword light pierced the void and whistled, its amazing speed and intense power were heart-stopping. Disciples of Dragon Palace held their breath as they watched this. Nangongji, do you think you can defeat me like this? Ridiculous. Jian Wushuang sneered. Although Nangongji's spiritual power was at profound gold core realm, he was still calm. Reincarnation sword skill. When Nangongji's swordsmanship swept through, Jian Wushuang engaged reincarnation sword skill. The vast sword essence of earth was maximized in the meantime. Reincarnation sword skill, a defensive sword skill, which could be exchanged for with 1,500 points. It could not be compared to formless sword wave. However, if it was properly used, its power could overcome the formless sword wave. Moreover, because of the low points needed for reincarnation sword skill and its outwardly simple technique compared to formless sword wave and formless swordsmanship, Jian Wushuang could master the sword skill perfectly. Jian Wushuang has completely mastered the reincarnation sword skill in the last 3 months, even reaching the peak. And now he used the reincarnation sword skill to its full potential. Clang. 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 Continuous clanging sounded around the martial art practice field. The surrounding disciples of Dragon Palace were shocked to see this. How fast! How strong! This swordsmanship is so fast, so amazing. Look, the swordsman is being completely suppressed, he seems to be losing. That is not necessarily the case. Don't you see that the swordsman has resisted Nangongji's swordsmanship even though he is being suppressed all the time? His defense is watertight. Right. He has mastered the reincarnation sword skill completely and put it to good use. It won't be easy for Nangongji to win. Lots of disciples started discussing in whispers. On the battlefield, sword flash struck at high speed and from multiple angles. Nangongji's swordsmanship, perception of sword essence and cultivation of spiritual power of the profound gold core realm had reached perfection. The heart-palpitating sword flash generated an irresistible feeling among the surrounding disciples. But what about Jian Wushuang? The sword kept moving, dauntless. His swordsmanship seemed simple, but resisted all the sword shadows perfectly. It was true that Nangongji's sword flash was powerful, and it had completely suppressed Jian Wushuang, who had no chance to strike back. Still, Jian Wushuang was resisting every attack from Nangongji. Well, although his cultivation of spiritual has reached profound gold core realm and his power is much better than mine, I can still defend. When I use my reincarnation swordsmanship, I can weaken the power of his swordsmanship. Otherwise, even if I could block, its impact force would be enough to defeat me. But now, he can dream about my defeat. Jian Wushuang's expression was cold. The most exquisite part of reincarnation sword skill is its ability to wear the opponent down. Using the sword strokes to weaken the power gradually. Finally, the power from the attacks had no impact to him. This boy is so hard to deal with. Nangongji's expression became unsightly as his attacks were blocked by Jian Wushuang over and over again. Chapter 78, Impudence. I cannot defeat him quickly even with my full strength. His defense is perfect and can even disperse force. Perhaps I could defeat him directly if my swordsmanship much faster than his. Nangongji said to himself. He needed a stronger and faster swordsmanship to defeat Jian Wushuang, but he has already used his full strength. How can he make it faster? There is only one way to defeat him, though it's a bit disgraceful. However, even if it's shameful, if I win, I will receive 12,000 points. Nangongji's face turned grim. He had already made up his mind to defeat Jian Wushuang in the most unethical and dishonorable way. That way is, through spiritual power consumption. Spiritual power is the source of power. The importance can be imagined. During the battle, spiritual power was constantly consumed, but it has a limit. Nangongji decided that he would compete against Jian Wushuang using the consumption of spiritual power. After all, he was in the primordial gold core realm and had reached the profound gold core realm. However, Jian Wushuang was only in the level of spiritual sea. There were two sub-realms between them, including a true realm. Under normal circumstances, Nangongji should have much more spiritual power Jian Wushuang. Naturally, he should last longer during battle. Once Jian Wushuang's spiritual power runs out, he would win. Phew. 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 The roar of swordsmanship continued. But, as the battle continued, the disciples of Dragon Palace began to understand Nangongji's intention. How shameless Nangongji is. Wang Yuan gnashed his teeth. He's going too far. As someone in the profound gold core realm, he should stop and end it in a draw if he can't quickly defeat an opponent in the spiritual sea realm. That way, he would suffer less embarrassment. But now, he actually wants to rely on his advantage in spiritual power to compete with Swordsman. It's a disgrace. Even if he wins, I would despise him. It's so humiliating. He even makes me, an expert of the gold core realm, feel extreme shame. The disciples of Dragon Palace looked at Nangongji with disdain. Even the two who came with Nangongji looked at each other for a moment with complex feelings. They also thought Nangongji is being ignoble. However, considering that they had loaned their points to him, if he won, they would also benefit. So they didn't say anything. Humph, idiots. During the battle, Nangongji glanced at the surrounding disciples of Dragon Palace, sneering in his heart, it is disgraceful, so what? The winner takes all. I will even do despicable acts to win those 12,000 points. Lose, lose. Nangongji watched Jian Wushuang, paying attention to his aura of spiritual power, but his complexion quickly changed. What's the matter? This is impossible. It was unbelievable. Yes, he could not believe it. He has been fighting with me for so long, but his spiritual power it is not weakening at all. Nangongji looked startled. As someone in the profound gold core realm, he has already consumed more than half of his spiritual power while fighting for so long. But what about Jian Wushuang? His aura was still grand, his swordsmanship was still sharp, and his spiritual power was still strong. There were no signs of him weakening. How is that possible? Nangongji couldn't believe what he was seeing. However, when Jian Wushuang saw the rich expression on Nangongji's face, the corner of his mouth lifted, turning into a cold smile. Spiritual power consumption. You want to defeat me with only spiritual power consumption. Jian Wushuang really wanted to mock Nangongji at this moment. He practices the heavenly creation skill. Although it seemed that he was in spiritual sea realm, the spiritual sea realm for the heavenly creation skill is the ultimate spirit sea. What is the ultimate spirit sea? It is a vast sea of spiritual power. When he first broke through to the ultimate spirit sea, He had 10 times as much spiritual power as ordinary warriors in the spiritual sea realm. However, he kept practicing these last 3 months. Not only that, he had eaten and absorbed the effects of 21 first-class heavenly spirit pills. Now, he was at the second stage of the ultimate spirit sea, endless spiritual power. He had 100 times more than an ordinary warrior in spiritual sea realm. 100 times more spiritual power. And Nangongji, in the profound gold core realm, only had several times that of ordinary warriors in the spiritual sea realm. How dare he compete against Jian Wushuang using consumption of spiritual power? It was like a novice warrior in sword principle complementing his swordsmanship is in front of a master of swordsmanship. It was stupid, just ridiculous. It's impossible, impossible. Nangongji's face had become extremely pale. He could suppress Jian Wushuang in a fight, but he couldn't win. Adding to that, his consumption of spiritual power was far more than Jian Wushuang's. Eventually, he would lose. Swordsman, stop. Can we end this in a tie? Nangongji said quickly. A tie. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang could not help cursing. Nangongji, I knew you were shameless, but I did not expect you to be this shameless. It is already ridiculous for you, an expert in the profound gold core realm, to fight with me, someone in the spiritual sea realm. When you realized that you could not defeat me directly, you even tried to defeat me using the consumption of spiritual power. But that did not work. Now you know that your consumption is faster than mine, and you actually have the guts to say that you want to end this in a tie. Nangongji, be a man. I have never met someone who is as shameless as you. Jian Wushuang cursed him openly, with no mercy, while the surrounding disciples of Dragon Palace looked at Nangongji in disdain. At first, he did not want to end with a tie. Now that he was going to lose, he wanted to stop with a tie. He was treating everyone like they were fools. Bastard. Nangongji tensed up. Now, with more than 90% of his spiritual power gone, his lack of spiritual power led to a sharp reduction in the speed and power of his swordsmanship. Jian Wushuang, who had been suppressed by him, struck back at this moment. OM. 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 His sword shadows were displayed majestically using the sword essence of earth. Jian Wushuang was obviously still at his peak and his sword continued to strike out. Nangongji had been completely defeated. Finally, a cold sword shadow swept out directly across Nangongji's arm, while Jian Wushuang used his foot to kick him. Nangongji flew back in an arc, like a parabola, eventually falling onto the ground. Nangongji lost. The whole martial arts practice field fell into silence. And at this moment, Jian Wushuang walked to Nangongji slowly, under everyone's gaze, looking down at him indifferently. You lost. 12,000 points. Pay up. Chapter 79, Sulai. On the martial arts practice field, the corner of Nangongji's mouth contained a trace of blood. After slowly standing up, his expression grew ferocious and was filled with resistance. Yes, he was not willing. He did not want to concede, even though he was defeated by Jian Wushuang after using his full power. However, no matter how unwilling he was, it was a fact that he lost to Jian Wushuang. He could not quibble. Ultimately, he could only tremble as he gave 12,000 points to Jian Wushuang. On the other side, the two disciples who had previously loaned points to Nangongji had a pale look. After seeing more than 12,000 points in his token, Jian Wushuang grinned and faced Nangongji again. Nangongji, I have some advice for you. Natural iniquity can be forgiven, but human iniquity cannot. Nangongji trembled physically and mentally. Suddenly. It's a good sentence. This rookie of the Dragon Palace is becoming more and more arrogant. A strong voice sounded out in the martial arts practice field, slowly followed by a red-robed man with a saber on his back. Everyone turned to face him at the same time. Sulai. It is him. The tyrant, Sulai. After seeing him, many of the disciples of Dragon Palace that were present couldn't help exhaling a breath of cold air. Obviously, they were in awe of this man. Sulai. Why is he here? Wang Yuan's expression instantly changed after seeing this person. Who is Sulai? At this moment, Yang Zexuan, who was always silent, frowned and asked. He sensed a mighty pressure that he had only felt from Bai Cheng since the time he joined Dragon Palace 3 months ago. The tyrant Sulai, a top genius among the disciples of Dragon Palace. Sulai was the only one who could possibly be compared with Bai Cheng, before second brother joined Dragon Palace, said Wang Yuan. Hearing this, Yang Zexuan's eyes could not help but squint. A warrior, who is in the profound gold core realm, was defeated by a rookie who has only been here for 3 months. Not only that, the rookie is only in the spiritual sea realm. Nangongji, you are definitely shameful enough, said the burly man, Sulai, with a laugh. Nangongji had a pale look on his face. If these words were said by someone else, he would be furious. However, these words were spoken by Sulai, who was also known as a tyrant. He was afraid to display even a little bit of a temper in front of Sulai. Sulai glanced at Nangongji, but he was too lazy to talk to him. Looking at Jian Wushuang though, he said, "Little guy, your name is Swordsman, right?" "Yes." Jian Wushuang nodded with a serious expression. When Sulai appeared in front of him and looked at him, all the pores in Jian Wushuang's body were directly tied up. This feeling felt similar to being looked at by a fierce ancient beast. Jian Wushuang immediately understood that Sulai's strength was terrifying. "I have heard of you. When you entered Dragon Palace 3 months ago, you only made it through the 4th level. But now, 3 months later, you should be able to make it through the 7th level with your comprehension of the essence realm of heaven and earth. That speed is matchless in Dragon Palace. Such a genius, I can't help being interested in you. Why not fight with me?" Sulai said casually. "Battle with you?" Jian Wushuang changed his countenance, but he immediately shook his head without any hesitation, and said, "Sorry, I'm not interested." Jian Wushuang did not want to battle with Sulai at all. The reason was simple. Sulai's strength was terrifying. Although he never made a move and just stood in front of Jian Wushuang knew that he was not this man's opponent. It was hard to say whether or not he could even take one move from Sulai. The gap in strength was incredible and Jian Wushuang had no interest in being abused. "You are refusing me." Sulai's countenance became clouded, but he suddenly grinned and said, "I don't want to make a bet with you, I just want a pure fight with you." "Your refusal? What good is it?" Boom. The floor under Sulai's feet exploded instantly and the figure of Sulai rushed forwards. At first glance, it looked like a mass of hot flames was fiercely racing towards Jian Wushuang. Oh no! At the moment when Sulai started moving, 2 figures also rushed out, simultaneously, from behind Jian Wushuang. Those 2 people, one was Yang Zexuan, and the other was Suro, who rarely spoke. As for Wang Yuan, he had only gone through the 4th level, so he was unable to help Jian Wushuang. 2 traces of flowing light appeared simultaneously, in front of Jian Wushuang. Yang Zexuan's eyes were cold and his saber was already drawn. In Suro's hands, there was a 2-meter-long, thick and heavy sword. Her slender figure raised the heavy sword and chopped out. "Haha, you want to stop me by yourselves." Sulai laughed while clenching his 5 fingers. Then, a terrifying flame filled with the essence of raging fire was released. It was as if he could burn everything around it. Then, Sulai used his fist to directly attack them. A violent force suddenly rushed towards them. Yang Zexuan was someone who had gone through the 8th level of the Dragon Gate. And Suro, herself, had gone through the 7th level. As for Sulai, On the surface, his strength was equal to a warrior who went through the 7th level. Bang! Bang! 2 deep crashes sounded and the figures of Yang Zexuan and Suro were both knocked backwards. They were knocked back forcefully, it was not because they moved backwards. The next moment, Sulai struck out with his fist again. This fist smashed directly toward Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang quickly lifted his sword and executed the reincarnation sword skill with his full power in an attempt to parry it. Bang! A terrifying power arrived. The force was more than Jian Wushuang could parry, even with the reincarnation sword skill. Subsequently, the figure of Jian Wushuang was sent flying back under that terrifying force, smashing onto the ground behind him. Silence. Everyone at the martial arts practice field looked startled. The only emerging voice was from disciples of Dragon Palace swallowing their saliva. Fearsome. Similar words echoed in everyone's mind. It was indeed terrifying. In only a flash, Jian Wushuang, Yang Zexuan, and Suro were defeated without any room to even struggle. So strong. Jian Wushuang slowly rose to his feet and wiped the blood from his lips, but there was a trace of shock in his eyes. His cultivation of spiritual power absolutely reaches the exceptional gold core realm. Not only that, his comprehension of the essence realm of heaven and earth is far higher than mine. Jian Wushuang thought secretly. I have gone through the 8th level of the Dragon Gate. But based on his attack, I know that his comprehension of the essence realm of heaven and earth is definitely higher than mine. Yang Zexuan had a serious look on his face. You too. Sulai clasped his hands and looked at Jian Wushuang and Yang Zexuan. A word of advice, as rookies, you better keep a low profile. Dragon Palace is not as simple as you think. What you are seeing now is only the tip of the iceberg. Jian Wushuang and Yang Zexuan were both startled. What they had seen of Dragon Palace so far was only the tip of the iceberg. Sulai was too lazy to explain any more and he wanted to leave. But, after only taking 2 steps, he stopped suddenly. He looked to the side, smiled, and said, Bai Cheng, you have been watching for so long. Have you seen enough? If you are itching for a fight, I don't mind playing with you. Chapter 80, The Earthly Dragon List. Bai Cheng. It's Bai Cheng. Following Sulai's gaze, the crowd immediately saw a white-haired man dressed in a white garment on the edge of the martial arts practice field. White hair like snow. He, Bai Cheng, was the top person of Dragon Palace. As everyone was looking at Sulai, no one noticed Bai Cheng's arrival. Sulai, I hope I didn't upset you. Bai Cheng squinted at Sulai. You don't provoke me, but just looking at you puts me in a bad mood. What can you do? If you feel bad, we can play a game and take a bet. Sulai sneered and gave a bold look. Bai Cheng's countenance was clouded and he shouted in a low voice. You don't get it? One day sooner or later, I'll beat you down completely. Haha, I'm waiting, but before this, you can think of ways to climb up the earthly dragon list. Sulai smiled and then left. Humph. Bai Cheng gave a cold grunt and then left. This scene made many disciples of Dragon Palace on the martial arts practice field look confused. It's said that Bai Cheng is the strongest disciple in the Dragon Palace. But why do I perceive that Bai Cheng seemed to be afraid of Sulai? I don't think so. I think that Bai Cheng doesn't dare to battle with Sulai. What on earth happened? Those disciples of Dragon Palace were confounded, as were Jian Wushuang and Yang Zexuan. Soon after, people on the martial arts practice field began to disperse. In the Dragon Palace. Palace Master White. Appearing in front of Palace Master White, Sulai said with great respect but not the previous superciliousness on the martial arts practice field, I have given Swordsman and Yang Zexuan some lessons based on your order. Okay. I have seen it. Good job. Palace Master White nodded slightly and said, Swordsman and Yang Zexuan have high talent, especially Swordsman. 3 months ago, he merely was at the 4th level. But now, he is qualified to go through the 7th level. In the history of our Dragon Palace, only several people could match with him in terms of the speed of his advancement. I have great hopes for him. However, we should give them some obstacles. After all, they are still rookies. Hearing this, Sulai could not help pursing his lips. It was known that he was similar to Jian Wushuang when he joined the Dragon Palace. He did not put other disciples of Dragon Palace in his eyes. But Palace Master White also asked a powerhouse to let him face some obstacles. He was badly defeated in that battle. He became more humble after that. In the manor, Jian Wushuang and another 3 people were drinking, sitting at a stone desk. Haha, I'm very happy looking at the defeated countenance of Nangongji. Wang Yuan sneered. He's arrogant and shameless. He is only at the level of the profound gold core realm. But he still wanted to vanquish third brother by the consumption of the spiritual power. What a foolish man. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly and said, Nangongji is not important seeing how he's not a threat in the future. As for Sulai, his strength still shocks me until now. So do I. Yang Zexuan also nodded. I thought that the people who could be qualified to be my rival in the whole Dragon Palace was only Bai Cheng. However, it's not the case now. Dragon Palace is not as simple as it appears, Suro on the side said with low voice, I have gone through the 7th level, so I know something. Though there are only 16 people that have passed through the 7th level, there are many others who have the strength to go through it. But they don't do it, so nobody knows them. I conservatively estimate that there are at least 30 people that have the strength to pass through the 7th level, or even the 8th level. On the surface, there is only Bai Cheng and your second brother going through the 8th level. But in fact, there are at least 5 people who can complete it. Sulai is one of those 5. Sulai has reached the level of exceptional gold core realm a long time ago. So Bai Cheng would be vanquished if they battle, although Bai Cheng's comprehension of the essence realm of heaven and earth is higher than his. So that's what it is. It could be the reason that Bai Cheng seems not to dare to battle Sulai. Yang Zexuan nodded secretly. We all looked down on Dragon Palace. Jian Wushuang shook his head and smiled. By the way, what is the earthly dragon list Sulai mentioned? I know it, Wang Yuan said this time. Earthly dragon list, set by the Golden Dragon Palace, lists the 100 strongest powerhouses of all experts of the Gold Core realm in the Tianzong dynasty. If someone can be listed on Earthly Dragon list, he would stand at the top of pyramid of all those of the Gold Core. All of them could vanquish those at the primordial Gold Core. The higher rank, the greater the strength. It's said that the experts ranked at the top 10 of Earthly Dragon list could match or even kill warriors at the level of the Yin-Yang Void realm. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang was shocked. Match, even kill the warriors of the Yin-Yang Void realm? It should be known that the gap between spiritual Sea realm and Gold Core was huge. And the gap between Gold Core and Yin-Yang Void realm was even larger. A warrior of primordial Golden Pill realm was like a monster if he could match with a warrior of Yin-Yang Void realm. It would be legendary if a warrior of primordial Gold Core killed a warrior of Yin-Yang Void realm. It's true. Each powerhouse listed in the top 10 of the Earthly Dragon list has this ability, Wang Yuan continued saying, by the way, the Earth Dragon list seems to be at the secret pavilion. If you are curious about it, you can swap points for it and read it carefully. Okay. Jian Wushuang left toward the secret pavilion without any hesitation. Hearing this, he was filled with ambition to rise on the Earthly Dragon list. Soon after, Jian Wushuang was back. He swapped 100 points for an Earthly Dragon list in the secret pavilion. Although it was called a list, it was a thick book. Jian Wushuang opened the first page. Tianzong dynasty is vast and is filled with talented heroes. Over time, old people are replaced by new people. Lots of heroes die and are forgotten. Our Golden Dragon Palace compiles the Earthly Dragon List and the Heavenly Dragon List by recording the heroes in the Tianzong dynasty. Earth Dragon List record the 100 strongest of the primordial Golden Pill realm in our Tianzong dynasty. Jian Wushuang was fascinated. There is not only the Earth Dragon List but also the Heavenly Dragon List. The Earthly Dragon List records the experts of the primordial gold core and the Heavenly Dragon List should record those of the Yin-Yang Void realm. Jian Wushuang kept reading. The 100 superiors of the Golden Pill realm on the Earthly Dragon List all had outstanding battle results and their strength was recognized by many sects. If you want to be listed on the Earth Dragon List, you need great battle results. Reading the first page, Jian Wushuang continued reading the second page right now. There were some introductions of the 100 powerhouses listed on the Earth Dragon List on the second page.